All right, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks. Today's episode will be about horror movies. My guests are Kristin, Miranda, Meeks, and Andrew Sides over here. It might look like I'm pointing to random people on your screen, but I got it right on mine. Don't worry. So I guess my first question would be what's the first horror movie you guys saw when you were younger? Because something obviously attracted you to the genre. It's a tough question.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but my dad used to, when I was a kid, on Saturday afternoons, they used to rerun old Vincent Price horror movies. And so my dad and I would sit, and I'd be, I don't know, 5, 6 years old watching these, and they totally freaked me out. So I don't remember the name of it, but I just remember some guy with a gloved hands was trying to sneak into the bathroom. He snuck into some lady's house, and she's showering. And he's trying to get into the bathroom, and I remember how scary that was. And that's just my first memory of starting to watch horror movies and getting into it. My dad kind of planted the seed when I was little.
Vincent Price, I mean, I think you're talking about either House on Haunted Hill.
It wasn't in a
Hell
haunted house though. Somebody like legit broke into this lady's house.
It was just a serial killer.
Yeah.
Huh? Good job, Vincent.
Yeah.
How about you, Miranda?
Well, I'm trying to think. So we did watch a lot of movies growing up. I think my first like soft introduction would be like Alfred Hitchcock. We watched a ton of his movies and I love those. And then I think my first actual one was when I was a little bit older, but we watched Sixth Sense.
Oh yeah.
When it came out, and that scared the crap out of me. So I was like, okay, there's something cool here that also terrifies me. But I think Sixth Sense was one of the first ones that like really hooked me. So
it's probably when that kid was like, I see dead people, and you're like, cool, man.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, this is it.
What I remember about that movie is I have a friend, Greg, who he's one of my most nervous friends when we watch a horror movie. Like he's just for days it'll stick with him, right? And that's like that's like a feeling like I have, like when I watch a horror movie, I'll be scared for a couple days. It'll be in the back of my head. I'll be thinking about it, but like every little thing beyond what he just saw scares the bejesus out of this kid. And I remember we saw Sixth Sense and the scene where he sneaks into the bathroom to take a leak, and then that ghost walks by the door real quick. We were in the theater and Greg sucked the air out of the room. And then I just looked at him and I was like, you just saw this movie the night before. Like, how did you even forget that was going to happen, And it was just classic Greg. We call that classic Greg. So, how about you, Andrew? What was the first movie you saw?
Oh God.
I know it's a reach of a question.
I didn't I don't remember seeing it in its entirety at the time, but I remember like the first, I guess, horror movie I saw was Alien. I think I was like,
God. What a scary ass movie to see as a kid.
It was on TV, and like my parents weren't like super like concerned about like what was on TV for the most part, because I also remember like a few years later, like around age 7 or something, they had Scanners on TV, which isn't really like I don't know if it's like really a horror movie, but there's definitely some scenes in it that I was like, holy fuck, what is this? Like 7-year-old me seeing a man's head get shotgun exploded is enough to be like, holy fuck, this is crazy. God, what was the first horror movie though that like I remember like saw all the way through? I think it was like one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
That was my first one. Was the first hey, what's up, Jason? Thanks for joining us, man. That was so my dad was very against me watching that movie, and then I forget how old I was. I think I might have been like 8 or 9, and I was just like, whatever, man, I'm gonna watch this movie somewhere or another. And my friends are all talking about it, so I snuck out of the house one day and I went and saw it down. My friend Mike lived down the street. I remember he had a copy of the movie that he rented. I sat there and watched that movie with him. Then I had to do that scary 2-block, 3-block walk home in Chicago in the middle of the night. And the whole time I was like, Freddy's coming to get me, And then like I got home and I remember I was like, you like give yourself a pep talk, and I was just like, it's fine. He can't get you till you sleep, right? Except I have to sleep at some point, right? And then so like a week straight of, I was like, if you saw me at that week, I was like a zombie because I couldn't sleep straight because everything was like that movie had him like the scene where he comes out of the bed and takes Johnny Depp under, scarred. I was like, so that was and where he takes his scalp off or his cap off, and he's like, "You've got the body and I've got the brain." I was like, "Fuck this shit," But I remember like that feeling of like, it's kind of like a hype, right? Like you're gonna be scared, and it's probably gonna stay with you for a couple days. Like, but you still want more of it, right? Like, yes. I still watch every October, that whole month, I do a thing of horror movies where I'm just like, I used to do it every day. I'd be like, which movie am I watching today? But with a kid, it's a little harder. So, like last Halloween, it was like every other day or every 3 or 4 days I'd watch one. But I try to make remember, Andrew's in a group with me where we made a whole spreadsheet, remember?
Oh my God, yeah.
And
Brianna's husband fucking knocked that out of the park for us.
We made a whole list, a spreadsheet, and then this other artist's husband took the spreadsheet and categorized it, and he went bananas with it. We were like, this is amazing.
He listed it by like type of horror movie, where you could watch it, when was it made.
Yeah.
I need a copy of this.
Yeah, I'll link you to it. Yeah, it's brilliant. I was just like, but like, I just remember like, and after that movie, I after I recovered from that, I still remember I wanted more of it. The one thing I do remember I could never get around to beyond a horror movie though is like a haunted house, or I don't like the idea of things jumping out and scaring the bejesus out of me unless it's there on screen because it's not in the room with me, if that makes sense, right?
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I refuse to go to a haunted house. I don't know why. Like, I don't know what the difference is, but it's like,
because you're not the character anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
I feel like Kristin probably loves haunted houses.
I love them, but I'm also a home haunter. Like all of the stuff back here, I work on my Halloween decorations every year, like all year long. I start planning in December. And so it becomes less scary when you're building things and then you're in all these face groups with home haunters and then professional haunters, and you're getting tips and tricks and you're seeing everything behind the scenes of how they're doing it. Becomes less scary. But yeah, before I got into all of that, they just freaked me out.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean,
especially the ones where you get separated from your friends and there's not that many people going through and you're all alone or with one other person.
Yeah.
Oh no, thank you.
That's awful.
I remember when I was 8 or something like that. Well, I remember like 2 haunted houses we went to back to back. I live in Florida, so I went to Halloween Horror Nights when I was 8 or something. Back then, it was much scarier than it is now. It's kind of amped down over the years as it's gotten like more convoluted and grand and all that. But I do remember there used to be this haunted house, actually not far from my current house. And the 2 things I remember in it was there was this lady that was in like a glass coffin that you walked over and it had rats in it with her. Like live rats were just crawling all over and stuff. And like, 8-year-old me, you see like a person you're walking on top of, you're like, holy shit, nope. And then I also remember there was this like, they had like a haunted nursery or something in it. And there was this like nurse or midwife or somebody like sitting in the corner, like rocking back and forth. Of
course,
and, like,
it was.
Yeah, like baby, which like at the time you think like, holy, like I don't know how they're doing it because you're like 8 years old or whatever. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, it's a puppet. It was like a hand puppet that she's like doing this motion. But she's like, oh, there's something wrong with my baby, and then goes like that kind of thing. Dude,
I remember my friend took me on a trip to Minnesota once, and his stepdad was like, there's this haunted house in Minnesota. I don't remember what it's called now, but he's like, this is the scariest haunted house you've ever been to. And I was like 14, I believe, and I was like, I doubt it. They're all scary. But we go into this house, and it had a room where you enter, and there's 3 doors, and only one of the doors is going to open for us. And it was my friend and myself. And we go through at one point we went up in the attic, and there's that typical old lady in the rocking chair. And she was rocking, and I'm like, we need to go past her to get to this other door. And I'm just like, cool. And we walked by her, and it looked fake. And I'm just like, this thing doesn't look real. It's not going to jump out. It didn't jump the whole time. And then we got to the door, and the door wouldn't open. And then the rocking stopped. and then the screaming started. Like, I was like, so, and then they had the floor drops, and you go down a slide to a room below. It was all sorts of like trippy. It was like an old house that they bought and just decked out. But I was like, I remember his stepdad had to buy us milkshakes afterwards, and I can't drink milkshakes. I had to get a Coke, but I was just sitting there like I was shook. Like, I didn't know what to do. But that old lady in the rocking chair reminded me of a movie that I'm trying to bring us back to the movie side of things here, but a movie that really like got to me when I was a kid. Another one, like Nightmare on Elm Street was whatever. It's like paranormal fear, right? But those are the ones I tend to like more than like I hate. I shouldn't say I hate them. I don't like movies that are the newer ones that have gore, like that horror,
like the torture porn stuff.
Yeah, like Hostel or Saw.
Yeah. I'm with you.
With those, I always feel like you need to have they need to have a level of like not taking themselves seriously for it to work. And usually when it's like really straight, like Hostel or Saw or something, it's the first time around you're like, oh, this makes me sick, and then the second time around you're just kind of like, this is really kind of boring. And like, you know, once you get past like the initial like oh, like you're shocked by it, you're just kind of like, there's not a lot here to really like latch onto.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I like the supernatural stuff, because it's a little more unpredictable.
Have any of you seen Host, which just came out in I want to say November maybe, or August through November of last year? It's on Shudder. It's fabulous. Host. The guy who directed it, he did it all during quarantine, and so it's all of these actors actually videoing on Zoom in their own homes. It's so realistic, and it's basically quarantine hits and nobody can see each other, so they decide to have a fun Zoom call, getting together, and as the activity they're doing a seance, so they hire a medium to conduct it, and it goes completely haywire. The movie is I think only about an hour and 10 minutes, and it is terrifying, and it was done so well. And imagine it's just basically like this, right? We're sitting here talking on camera,
video call, and
that's the whole movie. It's amazing.
Where is it streaming?
It's on Shudder.
Shudder, okay.
And
that sounds like, I remember when they do movies.
Fantastic.
Getting Shudder.
I have not. I'm sure I can find it. But like, so movies like that, I love. Like, that's one of the things I loved about Blair Witch Project was one I was going to reach out to. Not the scariest movie in the world, but the concept behind it. I know they reshot the whole thing, right? Because I know the original was kind of all hand cameras, but then Hollywood bumped it up and they did the thing over again. But what a brilliant idea. It doesn't cost that much. You know, production value is low. Stress and fear is high. Like where they have the fucking kids press their hands against the tent. I was like, you guys are all. I was like, you should just drown yourself. You're gonna die.
It's great.
I get a little sick from
slack, but
I remember when we saw it in the theater, my sister actually got motion sickness from it. Like, because remember it's that steady cam action. And I remember the second week Blair Witch was out, they had to put up signs on all the theaters saying this movie has motion sickness. That's like. I mean, I guess people were throwing up in theaters, you know. I was trying to think of another. One of my favorite supernatural type movies was always. A lot of people don't like this movie, but I love Evil Dead.
Who doesn't like Evil Dead?
People don't like Evil Dead.
It's a cult classic.
Yeah, it's a cult classic. I mean, the first one was wild. The second one was scary. The old lady in the cellar was.
I thought they did a pretty good job with the remake as well. Usually they're terrible, but I thought that one was pretty terrifying.
I think we discussed that on Sam Raimi. It was not Sam Raimi that directed it, though, right? Or Raimi?
No, I don't think it was.
I forget who the director was on the remake.
It's on my list. I heard it was pretty good. The original was, I think the problem is people always correlate it with Army of Darkness, and Army of Darkness is kind of like that goofy horror.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's really. I remember one of my cousins was like, Evil Dead 2 was a little goofy because he starts going all wacky in the middle of the movie. I'm like, well, let's think about this. If you were trapped in a cabin, all your friends got killed by a demon, you're trying to survive just till daylight so you can get the fuck out of there, you might lose your mind and think a bunch of statues on the wall are laughing in your face.
Mhm.
right? There's a giant face in the forest that's chasing you around. You had to cut off your own hand at one point.
Yep.
So I think the old lady in the cellar was the scariest part, where he's listening to that recording, and the husband's like, "My poor wife, I buried in the basement." And you see the eyes, and I was like, "Nope." I still remember watching that with my cousins in their living room. Like, I had a big old bucket of popcorn. I was all excited for that movie. I didn't touch it the rest of the time because I was just like in shock. And my dad was so mad. He's like, I knew this was going to happen to him. But, you know, I'm trying to think like of like classic. Like, I remember like, you know, I went back and I started watching like older horror movies, right? Like, because like I said, my first movie was Nightmare, because my parents were very much like, horror movies are going to bug this kid out, right? But I remember I went back and watched older stuff. Like, have you guys ever seen like Hell House?
Yes.
Oh, no, I haven't.
It's like 1963 or something. It's based on. Do you guys know who Richard Matheson is? He wrote I Am Legend. So he wrote a book called Hell House, which I read when I was in high school. I think I was like a freshman in high school, and that book made me scared of my own house. Wow. That's how well that book is written. Like,
you're the second person I've heard who really loves that book.
It kind of spirals a little bit at the end. I don't know if Matheson got bored or was just like, I don't know what I want to do with this, so here's your twist, you know. But it's like he was one of those writers that's very detailed in his writing, and he would give you all the specifics on what you're seeing. So he would build the room for you, and then you'd be in that room, just freaked out. I remember sitting in my own living room reading that book, like, you know, it was time to go to bed. I'd be looking around like there's something in the room with me, you know. But the movie, you know, I was like, I'm gonna watch this movie even though it's super old, and it's actually really good if you've never seen it. And it's got plenty of jump scenes in it. So,
had you ever seen Brood by David Cronenberg?
No, it sounds like
oh my goodness. I want to say it's his first or second feature film that he ever did.
Did you say Brood?
I should watch it now because I watched it in college, and I should rewatch it now because it basically involves the general plot is a man sends his wife away to a mental camp. Not really like a mental institution. Like, he sends her away to like this rehabilitation camp because she had like a nervous breakdown over anger issues or something like that, and he's taking care of their daughter while she's away. And then all of a sudden, like, these killings start happening in the movie, and they're done by someone that looks a lot like his daughter, and you find out it's his wife, and she's been like, in true like Cronenberg like body horror form, she's been gestating these like weird manifestations of her anger as like little miniature versions of her daughter. And
that's creepy.
I don't want to say much more about it because there's a lot of like weird, crazy visuals to it. It's one of those movies from the 70s where the very front half of it is kind of like, okay, get to the point. Like, it kind of is dragging, and then like towards the back half, as it ramps up towards the climax, it builds up into this holy shit moment, and then you're just kind of like, this is like really disgusting, and then the denouement happens, and then you're just kind of like, oh, thank God, we're over.
I thought you said Brood, right?
Brood, yeah.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Well, okay, so let me ask Miranda a question. What are your favorite types of horror flicks? Because I mean, obviously mine are paranormal.
Yeah, I agree. The ones that get me the most are the paranormal ones. I like they're a little bit quieter. They're a little bit, more of a slow burn type. But those are the ones that I find stick with me the most. Like, the gore and the shock value. I feel like those are like, they have their own place, but I feel like it's easy to like shock people. What's harder is to like really terrify them.
Yes.
That underlying sense of horror. It takes a lot.
Oh no,
we lost her.
She can jump back in. Something went wrong. I wonder if one of her kids tripped on the cable.
Oh,
No, there she
here
is.
she comes, I think.
Sorry about that.
It's all
Yeah.
good.
Ugh, I'm back. So anyway, yeah, those are the types that I really appreciate. Like, I don't know if we want to go into favorite ones yet or not, but
We can do that in a
Out
second.
there.
I was curious to talk to Andrew and Kristin to see what their favorite types are first.
yeah. So I agree. So the paranormal ones are definitely
Paranormal.
my favorite. Mhm.
How about you, Kristin?
I always love a good zombie flick. I know that they've been kind of played out, but in the past few years, South Korea has just totally stepped up their game with some fabulous zombie movies.
What's that train one that just came out?
Train to
So
Busan?
they Train to Busan came
That
out
was
a few
good.
years ago. It was fantastic. And then there is a TV show on Netflix called The Kingdom,
I
and
saw
it's
this.
a period
really
piece.
good.
I love it. It's fantastic. Like medieval Korean zombies. Like you can't lose. It's fantastic. It's a great storyline, great hero.
It's fun.
You have Shudder. Did you get a chance to watch One Cut of the Dead yet?
Oh no, I heard that. That is on my list. I keep a little
Yeah.
notes list. I'd love to see that one.
Yeah, I haven't gotten around to it yet. Like, we just haven't found the time. But
Mhm.
I'm really like, I've been kind of like over the years, kind of like you, like where it needs to. I've seen a lot of zombie movies. I'm like, yeah, you got to give me something interesting and new.
Mhm.
And that one sounded interesting. That it was like a. And so Alan and Miranda, what it is a student film crew, like film students in Japan. They're filming a zombie movie, and while they're filming it, an actual zombie outbreak happens,
Oh God.
like halfway through the movie, and the whole movie is done in one take.
What?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's hard to do.
What?
Yeah.
That's
How do you do a whole movie like that in one? How long is this movie?
I think 90 minutes.
That's really hard to do.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be like meticulously planned.
Yeah, and I think it's that director's first movie that
Get the
he.
fuck- Because like I've seen stuff like
Wow.
shows do like we did this all in one take, and you're just like and they were like it took us days to figure out how to do this, and it's only like
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Mhm.
I never
Yeah.
looked into. I hadn't looked into it yet to see if it's like a real one cut or if it's the kind where it
There's no
visually looks like
reshoots.
a cut, but
Yeah.
there's like if you pass behind a pillar, you can do your cut right
yeah.
there or something.
Yeah. So let
Mhm.
me ask you: do you like fast zombies or slow zombies?
Oh gosh, I love them both. It depends on the storyline. I think the fast ones give me that rush of adrenaline
Yeah.
and freak me out, but the slow moving ones give me that sense of dread and hopelessness and helplessness. What are you gonna do? So I think it really just depends on the movie.
Yeah, because like I remember like Walking Dead is not as fun as it used to be when it first came
Yeah.
out, but the sense of like the herd coming at you, and then you're like, well, I can try to get inside this house, and if the house doesn't open up, you're like, well, now I'm screwed because they're getting closer every time I screw
Right.
up too, right? And then you're
Yep.
like, I'll stand on top of this car, which is great, except now
Mhm.
there's zombies surrounding you, and you don't know where to go.
Right.
And you're like, great, I guess I die on top of this car. So Andrew, what's your favorite type of genre for horror movies?
It's I have it like split in two for like two very different. Like if I want like ones that really do like kind of like scare me or like unnerve me, it needs to be something in the vein of like The Witch, where it's like that slow
That's
burn.
the other one I wanted to watch.
Yeah, it's psychological thing where it doesn't really like have jump scares or anything, but it's something that like sits in your brain days afterward.
Mm-hmm.
But I do admit that a lot of the horror movies I do watch are ones where it's a little cheesy. They kind of know it's cheesy, and they're not taking themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Like the later Jason movies, or like Nightmare on Elm Street, or something like Reanimator.
Mhm.
And you either have fun sets or fun kills, something that's like it's weird. It's like Hostel. Now, like I don't care for like torture porn or gore like that, but if you have the same kind of gore, I guess, within like a Jason movie where you see a person get like their head twisted around and then put on like a fountain or something, because it looks so fake and so outlandish, you're kind of like, yeah, this is awesome. I wonder how they did that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have you seen Tucker and Dale versus,
Yeah.
I think it's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I think that's the name of it. That's a great one. It's a
Tucker
fabulous
and
one.
Dale.
A lot.
I'm gonna have to make a list and then put it under the.
That was one I didn't when I first heard about it, or like the trailer of it or whatever, I kind of dismissed it. And then my wife had it on like one night, and I kind of watched a little bit of it in the beginning, and then I got sucked in, and I realized like, oh wow, this is really really good actually.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
I've not seen that.
That kind of reminds me. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Miranda. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, that kind of reminds me of the Cabin in the Woods. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
So I love that movie.
Yeah,
I hate the fact that it's Joss Whedon now.
Yeah.
Well, he produced it.
He
didn't
produced
direct
it, yeah.
right?
But it's a great movie. It's a great fucking idea. It's a great movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's open for multiple. Well, I guess it could be open for a part 2 if you really wanted it to be.
Sigourney Weaver, her cameo.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean, that movie was a movie that just happened to be on one day, and I'm just like, what is this? I'll watch it, right? And I finally just watched it. I watched the whole thing on like Netflix, I think, because I was tired of the commercials. But I was like, this is a brilliant idea. I mean, because I love the scene where they have to pick up the objects, and then they're placing bets on which monster to release based on. I'm just like, cool. And
I
then
love the one that he just wanted to see a mermaid.
Yeah,
so bad.
he's like, I just want a mermaid so bad. That always reminds me, every time I see any movie where someone's trying to see like a mermaid or loves mermaids, it reminds me of Gen Con, because there's a dude that walks around the show. I think they just call him the mermaid guy. He will walk table to table and he'll literally be like, do you have any mermaids? That's his like thing. And then there was a fun bingo card that would go around and we'd be like, mermaid guy, like
check.
Yeah, check. But Andrew, when you said The Witch, that reminded me, like, I love paranormal movies, but I love like indie flicks like that one. That's on my list. I sent you guys a video to watch in the Skillet group the other day of I think it's pronounced the Vey. It's VIY. It's an old, I want to say it's a German film.
I missed that. I kind of remember that in the Rusty Skillet. But...
So I sent you a brief clip of a scene. It was probably one of the scariest scenes in that movie for me. But in the States, it's called Forbidden Kingdom. And if you can find it, it's based on this crazy ass old book. I'm trying to remember if it's German or Norwegian, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's written in like 1857 or something. It's super old, okay? But the guy who wrote it was like, it's like there's scenes in it where these group of people are exploring a forest, and then they get lost, and they end up staying in a witch's house. In the middle of the night, the witch drugs one dude, ends up riding him like a fucking horse around town, and he's like killing people or something. And that's just the base level crazy in that book. But the movie is about like this supernatural demon. The scene I sent you is it's like practical effects and some CG, but it's insane to watch. And I'll post it on the bottom of the link if the show's over. But the guy like literally is like sitting there eating, and then this supernatural entity tries to take over the room he's in, and all the people in the room transform, and it's just the whole process of the room transforming, and he's got to draw a circle of protection real quick with a piece of chalk to put himself in, right? He's like I guess you would call him a sorcerer or a warlock. And that actor as well, you've seen him in other movies. You'll know his face once you see him, but that is a movie I would suggest everybody watches if you can. It's called Forbidden Kingdom in the States.
Okay.
And I think it's pronounced the VIY. There's an artist, you might know Tiffany Turrell. She posted it a couple years ago randomly, I think on Twitter or something, and I messaged her to be like, what the fuck is this? Like, and she was like, that's probably the best scene in the whole movie, but, I was like, tell me what it's called, because I want to see it. It looks scary, I want to see it. Because I love movies like that where you have to, like, you're not just running from this thing, but you can also actually fight it. I remember when I was a kid, movies like Hellraiser would really, like, freak me out, because it seemed nearly impossible to defeat Pinhead and his friends. They almost always get the jump on you. That's one of my favorite Freddy Krueger movies was, I think, the third one. I think it's called The Dream Warriors.
Yeah,
Nightmare. Because there's a moment where you believe they can stop him, you know, and they're badass, and you know, and you're just like, nah, you guys are all gonna die. But I guess we can go back to your one question, which is, what was your favorite horror movie? Which is really a hard question to answer, I think. Yeah, dead silence.
Yeah. No.
I mean, you
Yeah,
obviously have
so
a favorite since you were asking.
I do. Yeah, nothing that I've seen has like surpassed it. So honestly, my favorite one is Hereditary.
Oh,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah, like that one was actually like, I remember watching that and it just, scary movies stick with you, but that one honestly, like that recovery period for me was
Mhm.
like, I think it was like 2 months of just like
Really?
not sleeping. Yeah, it was okay. Also, I think I'm like your friend where I'm just like I can't handle stuff very well.
Sure.
So, but yeah, that was like, I love that movie. And some people think it's like cheesy or whatever. It's not cheesy to me because paranormal stuff like terrifies me.
Mhm.
Like, have you guys seen The Boy?
Is
No.
that
It's
is that the one where
like,
the man is in the walls?
yes, that's
Okay,
the one.
What?
I didn't.
So at
I
first it's
did.
this doll, right? And it starts to do weird things, and I was terrified, okay? And then I guess that's the ending. So it actually turns out it's this guy that's living in the walls, and immediately I was like, this is not scary at all. It's just some dude living in the walls. Who cares? Whereas a doll that comes to life, that's freaky, okay?
That's like, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the stuff that terrifies me. And so in Hereditary, I just love that Ari Aster, I was reading something and he made the movie because he wanted to do like this intense family drama type movie, and he used horror as the vehicle to provide that. And just that feeling afterwards, it's just so intense. And honestly, like for a while I was like, I don't think I'll ever watch that movie again, and now I know I will be able to because I loved
Sure.
it so much, but I need to like prepare.
That
But
sounds.
I love it.
I'll have to. That's one of those movies that's been on my list, but it just seems like what you're saying is solidifying the feelings I have around it, which is like, it feels like it's gonna damage me for like a week or two.
It
Like,
is,
and
but
I might not be mentally prepared for that yet, you know. But
it's
maybe I
so
just need to
good.
suck it
It's
up.
so good. And like the one, I'll finish, but the other thing that I like that he did in this movie that I hadn't seen in a lot of other, ghost movies and paranormal movies, it's usually like a flash of something, right? You see a ghost walking by or something in the mirror, and then the actor turns around, or actress, and then it's gone. And in this movie, like, I'll let you watch it, Alan. But
No, tell me the jump
there's this
scene,
scene
please.
okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there's a scene where, like, if you look in the corner, you see a figure, but it just sits there, and it's so terrifying because you're making that connection. You're like, it's not going away. Oh,
I
so
saw like my
creepy,
friend
so
sent me like
awful.
a scene where like there's a dude, he's walking in the hallway, I think, and then there's a figure in the corner, and then it chases him, and then he runs up into like the attic or something. And I was like, I'm good. Like that,
I'm good.
and that's not even the whole thing. I just saw a clip of it, and that stayed in the back of my head for like,
Man. And just the family dynamics, it's so intense, and and the acting is phenomenal.
Yes.
Like 100%. What's the main actress's name?
Toni Collette.
Toni Collette absolutely should have gotten some kind of award for it, but honestly everyone in there is just, they really sell it.
Yep.
That's all right. Well, maybe I'll suck it up, and I'm gonna write. Oh, I wrote it down. Maybe I'll suck it up and watch it. When you said Hereditary, those kind of movies, like that reminded me of the first time I saw, and I don't know why, but the first time I saw Paranormal Activity. Right?
Yep. Couldn't sleep. I got home from the theater, and I remember I was up until 5 o'clock in the morning with the lights on. For weeks, I was convinced there were demons in my apartment at the time. It was that just messed with my head. I
mean, you know the scene where she's like in the kitchen and all the the cabinets open up right away. You know it's coming, right? You're like, if you've seen enough horror movies, you're like, this would be the perfect place for a chair to fly or something to slide off that counter. I thought like they've set it up so like she's eating like a bowl of something, right? And you're like, that's just gonna go flying off the table. But instead, all the fucking cabinets open up, right? And you jump like a foot out of your chair. And I was just like, I did not expect that shit to happen.
Yeah.
Or when she gets dragged down the step. Anyone who hasn't seen it at this point, spoilers, fuck off. Like, it's been around.
The great part of that movie is you're watching the footage and you're just wondering, where is the scare going to come from and when and how long am I going to wait? And the feeling of dread, and you just don't know. And then a few times the nights nothing happened. And so you get sucked into this feeling of, oh, okay, I can breathe. And then it just wham hits you.
Yep. I love how they they in the second one you get that idea that it came from the first house to the second house, right? And I've not seen the third, or I think there's a fourth one at this point, because in my head I'm like it might ruin I thought it ended on a good high note with the second one, but I've not seen the other two. I'm hearing they're pretty good, but those kind of that movie reminded me a lot of if you watched when you're saying you couldn't sleep at night, it reminded me of, have you ever seen The Grudge?
Oh yeah.
Okay. The first time I saw that movie in the theater, I remember I went with my friends. We saw it at like a late night show, and the whole time I was driving home, I refused to look in my rear mirror because I kept thinking I was going to see that little boy that like meows at you like a cat. I was like, "Fuck this shit!" Don't look in the rear mirror, man. Don't look in the rear mirror. I was on a dark road with no lights, and I had trouble sleeping at night from that. The whole sequence where no part of that movie scared me the most except the very final scene where she's trying to get out of the house and she opens the door and the head's at the top and it comes sliding down. And I'm like, why? It's such a and it makes the creepiest sound, like a door being opened or something, like a creaking sound. It's that shit stayed with me for weeks. And I was like, and then someone's like, there's 2 more parts. I was like, I'm good. I don't need to see the next 2. Right?
Good.
I did watch the Japanese version. Is it Japanese or Korean? I forget. Japanese, I believe.
It's Japanese.
Yeah. I did watch the Japanese version, and I think those movies are scary because they do the thing where they zoom in on like the eyes a lot, and so you get to see like the fear, and I'm just like, I'm scared, man. I get it. I don't, let's zoom back out, that goes right up there with what's the one with the video?
The Ring.
The Ring.
The Ring.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Dude, my cousins would fuck with me for weeks.
The one scene in that whole thing that like has stuck with me still after all these years is when the horse like goes overboard and then you watch it like drown in the boat propellers. Like all the rest of that movie I kind of don't remember at this point, but that thing I still remember really clearly.
Yeah.
I really like you. I mean, that movie, my cousins would call me for like weeks. They would call me and just be like, 7 days. And I'd be like, why, man? I forgot about it. I'll tell you a funny.
You take the TV out of your room after.
No, I didn't go that extreme with it, but I did have I would have moments where I'd wake up and the TV was on, and I just thought my dad was messing with me. I think my dad would walk in there and turn it on and just walk out. So I'd wake up and I'd be like, why is the TV on? Like. That's kind of creepy, and I would turn it off. But I feel like my family was, messing with me. We used to do, like, I'll tell you a funny story about my friend. And if he's ever watching the show, he's going to be so pissed at me about this. But I went and saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake with him. And the whole movie, he was all jumpy because he doesn't like horror movies. But here he is watching it with me. I don't know why. To the point where, like, there's a jump scene. He kicked the seat in front of him and launched the kid in front of him out of their chair. And I was like, relax, bro. Like, and I remember we were done. We went to get food, and he was just like pacing. He was just like, I wish I didn't do that to myself. I wish I didn't watch that movie. Aww. And for days, this dude was like, he was. And I remember when did Texas Chainsaw? When that movie came out, I think I was already in my 20s. So in my head, I was like, yo, you're in your 20s. Relax, like let's do whatever it takes to calm you down. And it stayed with him for like weeks, man, because like he couldn't sleep at night in his own and none of his family was at home. They were all on vacation somewhere, so he couldn't sleep straight at night at his house. He had his girlfriend stay over 2 nights in a row. In the middle of the week, he came and stayed in our guest room, and my dad and I are so mean. while he was sleeping, we were gonna start the trimmer up, the weed whacker. And my mom was like, "Don't do that to him." Like, we were in the garage snickering like little kids, setting it up. We were gonna go up in the bedroom, just like, you know. He probably would have had a heart attack in the room, but you know. And then like I remember on a Thursday night, my friend and I stayed over at his house because he was just shook, and I was just like, I've got friends who won't watch him. Right? They're just like, nope. I know exactly what's going to happen to me. It's probably what happened to my friend here. And they're like, I'm not going to watch these movies. And I get it. You know, it's if your mind can take things to that level. Like, I remember a week after this or 2 weeks after this, after my friend finally calmed down, I made the mistake of fucking with him one more time. He was watching a house in the middle of a fucking forest for another person that worked with him. And he's like, it's really dark out here. There's 3 dogs I'm babysitting. It's kind of creepy. And I said, make sure you check all the locks. Make sure the doors are locked. He goes, why? I'm like, I don't know. There might be some crazy chainsaw wielding maniacs out there. And I didn't think about it when I said it. And 10 minutes later, his girlfriend called me and was like, why? Why did you do that to him? And I was like, I'm sorry. He didn't sleep. He didn't sleep the whole night. Because in the back of his head, he was thinking about that movie. So that movie really... Yep. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a classic. I've seen the house in Texas where they filmed part of... I don't know if they filmed the whole movie there. The original. Not the remake. The original.
It's a barbecue restaurant now.
What?
Really?
Really?
In Texas. Yeah, you can go there and eat and... Yep.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's a gas station. So there's a house that is a restaurant, I think, if I recall correctly. Like where the house with the movie was filmed. But then they've done something with like... I don't know if the gas station is attached to it, and that's where they make all the barbecue or something. But yeah, it's down in Texas. I think a couple hours from Austin.
Okay, so that's a different house then, because my cousins live in Dallas, and we went to maybe it's another house from a different one of the films. But my cousin was like, it was like way down a dusty road. And he's like, that's the house they filmed. Either wait a minute, I think that's where the real life killer it's based on lived. Maybe. Because, Leatherface is based on a real... I mean, he didn't run around with a chainsaw, but he's based on an actual serial killer that...
It's based on Ed Gein, I believe.
Maybe you probably know more than I do about this.
He's up in Wisconsin, Plainfield, Wisconsin. I know way too much about serial killers.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, all I know for Chicago is Gacy, right? Because I've been to... Anyone who lives in Chicago has drank at the L&L Tavern.
Yes.
That's where that dude used to frequent,
Yep.
And Clown. So that leads me to Clowns, which is a horror movie genre I avoid at all costs if I can help it. Because Clowns... Same. I don't know what happened to me as a kid. I want to say it was It. Because I read It as a kid. I can't stand... Everyone who knows, Andrew knows this. I fucking hate spiders. And I remember seeing that movie as a kid. And I thought... My cousins are always like the catalyst to me being fucked up, I think. But they were like, oh, you read the book. The book was scary to you. Let's go watch this movie that came out with, what is his name? Tim, what's that dude's name played It? Tim
Curry.
Oh.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the movie was, the first half was scary because it's a fucking clown trying to kill kids. Mm-hmm. And I got through it. And then the second half was scary, but there's these adults fighting a clown. And then, do you guys remember what shows up at the end?
The spider.
A giant fucking spider. Yeah. I was just like, why, guys? Why do you hate me so much, right? But that movie, like, clowns, I always correlated it back to things like Gacy. Because Gacy was that scary-looking fucking clown that's killing kids when I was growing up, right? Like, he was just kidnapping kids. So, and when they take that idea of that, a real life person and put it into a movie, you're like, that's based on this, and that's kind of creepy to think about.
You're telling me you haven't seen what is it called? I think it's just called Clown. The one where the guy puts on a clown suit, but it turns out to be a demon skin.
No.
Oh.
I mean, I had a hard time seeing through. Do you remember like old school as Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Oh, that's classic.
Oh my goodness, you had a hard time with that?
I made it through it. Trust me, I love those movies where that's right up there with Critters for me. Right? They were like Critters was one of okay. If you're talking about sci-fi horror movies, like it would be like Alien, which scared the shit out of me as a kid because if you're just trapped on a ship with this giant beast. Critters, I love that movie. I love the the shapeshifter bounty hunters that show up. Was that Mick Jagger in that one role, or the dude just happened to look like Mick
No,
Jagger?
it's just the guy that looks a lot like Mick Jagger.
Yeah, so that dude I thought was cool because when I was a kid, I thought it was Mick Jagger, and I was like, oh, Mick Jagger's hunting people down, you know.
So is that your favorite then, or what do you think is your favorite?
Oh man, like I feel like I really loved Alien when I was younger, but if I had to pick like a favorite right now, I really always love watching The Conjuring.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And I think it's because it falls in line with the idea of like, I love movies that don't overcomplicate their sets. So this is just all in one farmhouse. I think there's maybe 3 or 4 sets in the whole movie. The bulk of it's all filmed inside this farmhouse. You don't find out what the entity is till the last like 30 or 40 minutes of that movie. Have you guys seen The Conjuring?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And the spin-offs for it,
Good.
like they're all like, so when Miranda was talking about dolls that come to life, Annabelle is fucking scary as hell. It is a demon inside of that doll. And then the other thing I really love about it, like I was saying before, was the 2 paranormal experts that show up are based on a husband-wife team that are real.
Oh wow.
The room that
really
you know their names?
The Warrens.
The Warrens,
The
yeah.
Warrens.
So you know, and that's what they did for a living, right? The wife was like a medium. Sure.
It's something like that, yeah.
And the husband was just a paranormal expert, and he knew it. And that room that you see in the movie, where he's like, these are all these artifacts that we collected that are possessed or haunted, and they had like runes and wards on the door so nothing can get out. Like they actually have a room like that, but you know, to what level I don't know. But that concept was kind of cool to me, right? Like, and then they give you little Easter eggs. So you see Annabelle sitting in that room, and then you get the backstory. Annabelle's scary as hell, by the way, if you haven't seen it. And there was another one they did. I think they're up to part 3 in The Conjuring. I've never seen past part 1 because I always edge on like.
So good.
Is it good?
I think part 3 or part 4 coming out this year. I can't
3.
remember.
3.
Oh, 3.
Have you seen part 2?
I
haven't
think
either.
I've seen the second one.
So here's the thing with these kind of
movies. I
movies.
love the first one so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to ruin
point.
the feelings I have for one by saying, "Oh, you guys ruined this by running this second one," right? Like, it's not like it's not a Fast and Furious movie.
The second one, and she likes it. I just haven't gotten around to it.
I mean, I will eventually get around to it because I watched Annabelle, and like I said, they knocked that one out of the park. But I just, you know, but yeah, if I had to pick, I don't know if I have an all-time favorite. Like I loved, like I said, Alien was one of those movies. When I saw that movie, I was like, this is cool because it has, again, it's got the one set. You're on the ship, like you're not really going anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's got this one creature that you got to look for. Oh man, she's got like a.
I'm in the process of making one right now for Halloween.
cool.
I have to paint him.
I like the fact that you get prepped for Halloween at the beginning of the year, all the way to October.
Oh, all year long.
I've seen your house. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, that scene I remember, you know, as a kid was super scary, right? And the first time you see a chest burster come out of that dude. And then you hear about how Ridley Scott filmed that, where he didn't tell the actors what they were about to witness. He just said something scary is going to happen. Act, basically. And what's scary was this thing comes out of this dude's chest. So all their reactions are like legit reactions to what's happening on set, right? But yeah, so like, I would say The Conjuring for now until I come up with something better. But
yeah, it's a good one.
So Alan, you said you do some planning for the month of October with a bunch of Halloween movies, and I think a really great genre, it's like a mini genre to get you prepped, is there's people that actually run haunted houses, and there's a couple of really great horror movies about like people who do like commercial haunted houses. The house is October built, Hell House LLC, and then also on Shudder, it just came out about 2 years ago, which is Fabulous Haunt. Like it's about kids out partying on Halloween night. They want to go to a haunted house, and that it goes wrong. Those are some really great ones just to get you in the mood. So
you said the houses that October built, House LLC.
Yeah, that's a found footage one where they're basically people are tracking the scariest haunted houses across the southern United States, and
Sure.
they're doing like a series of YouTube videos about it. And they run into a group that starts to mess with them. I'll just put it that way.
Of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fucking kids, I swear to God. What's the last one you said?
Haunt, which is on Shudder. So
I
good.
really need to get on Shudder. I saw something, I want to say it was either on Prime or Netflix. It was about like people who do haunted house. There's a guy in California that turns the front of his house into a small haunted house, and he's constantly fighting with his neighbors. He makes you sign a waiver in case you have a heart attack while you're in there.
That guy is, a lot of the people in the haunted house industry, they have really mixed emotions about him because he's more into literally torturing people.
Yeah.
He just does some awful stuff, and that's just not fun. That's not in the fun vein of Halloween and being scared of vampires and witches.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who would want to put themselves through that. Like, he'll make people drink their own vomit and eat bugs and
yeah, and you sign a waiver that says like they're gonna do all sorts of wild things to you, and you can't like sue them later by
He's
wow.
crazy.
Forget that.
Yeah. And that guy, I saw that. So I saw that, and I never finished it because in my head I thought, if the rest of this is like this, I have no interest in sitting through this for another hour, because that guy made me want to punch him in the face, basically. But like, I've been to like what's the one here called Hades Haunted House, classic, right? It's been here forever. And I think that's the one that had like when you like there's a cage on one side, you lean on the wall, and the wall starts moving you closer, and you're like, oh, this is bad, like things like that. Just I'll tell you a funny story about myself. I hate haunted houses to a level of I went to Canada once with my family. There was a wax museum, but my uncle said it looks a little bit like a horror like a haunted house, and I said it says wax museum. It said science fiction wax museum. So I asked the guy at the front, I said, is this a wax museum or a haunted house? And he said, it's a wax museum. I said, okay. Bought a ticket, went in by myself. My family went to do whatever the fuck they were doing. I walked through. It is, in fact, a wax museum. But then you get to the last part of it where there's a Roswell room, and there's an alien. And there's an actor who comes out. It looks like a scientist. It's me. I think I was in high school. I want to say I was maybe a freshman or sophomore. So I'm the oldest one in this group, and there's a bunch of younger kids with me. Maybe like 5 or 6 behind me. And we're all just like, what's happening here? This is a cool room. And then while the scientist, he's like, this is the alien we found in Area 51. Alarms start going off. And behind him, there's another alien that stands up and runs out of the fucking room. And I'm just like, it's like in that feeling. You're like, I'm in it now, And I run towards I literally go towards the door to open it because I think this is the way to go. And I open it, and the scientist is behind. This guy runs out of the room too, right? The scientist. And he's like, wrong room, son. I mean, he closes the door, and I'm just like, and this one kid in the group was like, what the fuck is happening? I'm like, dude, this just turned into a haunted house, And I remember I had to navigate, being the oldest in this group now. I'm like, well, I guess I got to man up, So I'm walking through the hallways, and in the hallways, this little kid or little person that they hired to play this alien keeps opening the door and closing it and stuff, and it's fucking scary. Like, you walk into a hallway that's completely dark, and I'm like, something's gonna touch us in there, guys. Like I ran through it, right? Like, I was like, fuck this shit. I make it through this haunted house. I come outside. I'm like pasty. My uncle's like, are you okay? You don't look good. I'm like, it was a haunted house. I walked right up to the front desk. I'm like, motherfucker, you told me it was a wax museum. And he's like, he's fucking Canadian, right? He's just like, I'm just like, I demand my money back, like I was lit, I was like, that sucked. So my whole family hears this story. My uncle couldn't stop laughing. They're like, Alan was so white when he came out of there. I love
your family.
Yeah, fuck. Yeah. So here's the thing. Since I made fun of my friend Greg, I will make fun of myself and give you the extra kicker to my story. 2 weeks later, we go to Wisconsin Dells. There's another wax museum there. My uncle, Father Bosco, God rest his soul, my sister are like, let's go in his wax. Hey, Alan, you want to go inside this wax museum? I was like, fuck you guys. I literally said, fuck you to a priest, okay? But I go because my uncle's like, it's fine. It's a wax museum. You've been through it before when you were a kid. You know what it is. So we go through it. It's got like horror stuff and sci-fi stuff, and it's got like Wizard of Oz and Frankenstein and all sorts of bullshit. But the whole time it's really dark in there, and we're walking, and you get that feeling when somebody's following you. So I look over my shoulder, and it's pitch black, and I'm just like, guys, there's somebody back here. And my uncle's like, you're just scared from the last thing. Don't worry, just keep going. And then that feeling just kept going up, and I'm just like, no, man, something is back there following us. And they're like, you're just being weird. And then something bumps me, and I drop every swear word in the book as I jump forward. And the guy who works there takes off his hood. He's in a black hood, like a fucking monk's robe, following us to make sure we make it through the haunted house. But he wasn't paying attention at some point, and he bumped into me.
Oh.
And of course, now my family's like, this guy's scared of everything, right? And they couldn't stop laughing for days. And I'm just like, I'm glad my misery is a form of joy for you guys, like. So after that, I refuse to go to wax museums now too, because it's just, I don't like I used to, I think when I was younger, not care about like Reese Park in Chicago used to turn it to a haunted park. I went to it all the time. It was great. Hades, I used to go there with my friends all the time. But as I got older, it's just like the one in Minnesota, I had no fear going into it. I had fear once I was in it, right? I don't know what it is. Like I could sit through a horror movie, jump scenes and whatever, but I think it's because there's a real feel of that thing trying to get you, right? Like I've seen the way you decorate your house. If you do a haunted house, I will come look at it. I'm not going to walk through it because I've told you all my secrets now. You'll probably try to scare the shit out of me while I'm there. I guarantee you Nancy has no problems with haunted houses though. So that's the thing. Like my sister is that rare. She's probably, Kristin, you and her probably get on great. She loves haunted houses. Like every year she wants to go to a haunted house. And I'm just like, pass. Feel free to take Nancy with you,
Actually, I think I will because my husband won't go with me. So
Nancy will go. I'm sure she will. Also, Jay's like me, isn't he?
Yeah, he just wants nothing to do with it.
I'm trying to think.
Is your favorite like horror movies like ones that have haunted houses in them, or are they like zombie movies like you mentioned?
I like both. I like it all, except like I just love the whole everything, horror, Halloween, all of it, except for the gore stuff. So yeah, I'm not picky.
Like I like the idea of so now we just bought this house, and now this year, my house is gonna be decked out for Halloween.
You'll turn into a home haunter real quick. It becomes addicting.
I like the fact that it's called Home Haunter.
Yeah, it's like there's a group called the Chicago Haunt Builders on Facebook. There were 600 of us when I joined. Now there's 1,200 of us. We do make and takes, which are you get together once or twice in the summer. We haven't during COVID, but there'll be a workshop where you learn how to make an animatronic, tombstones. And it's people bouncing ideas off of each other and people who just have this passion for it. It's so nice that I found a home because I think all my friends and family get sick of hearing about it.
I mean, one year my dad my dad was very chill with me decorating the front lawn for Halloween as long as the day after Halloween, I took all that shit down. It wasn't like 2 days later, 3 days later. Like as soon as Halloween was over, down. Like I used to put up the tombstones. I think the crazy thing I ever built was my friend Jason and I once built a scarecrow with we had the plastic pumpkin head. I didn't want to put a real pumpkin head on it until on Halloween day I put a real pumpkin head on it. But every day up until then we had a plastic one with just what do you call them, like glow sticks that you snap and throw in. We built a Grim Reaper type thing that was attached to a string, something basic like that. But then the gravestones, we had tombstones, and then we bought mounds of dirt, and then I had skeleton hands coming out of it. And I have not been able to do that kind of stuff in years because I lived in a condo for the last 10 plus years. So it's going to be fun.
You can.
Oh, I'm going to have a field day. I may or may not scar my child. We'll find out,
My daughter comes down to my basement that is very creepy and she begs, I want to see the vampire. I want to see the ghosts. I want to see the skeletons. And then sometimes she'll say, that scares me. I said, do you want me to put it away? No.
That's you're like,
funny, it's scary.
Good girl. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's see. We need to wrap this up pretty soon here. So I'm trying to think of if I've missed any cool. I will say, when we're talking about the indie flicks, I do feel like a lot of the indie horror flicks tend to, I don't want to say creep me out a little more. And I mean, I feel like it's because they have more, what's the word I'm looking for? They have more like leeway to put things in their films that in the States that, I don't want to call the U.S. weak, but there's a lot of laws and stuff in place for films here where they're like, nah, that's going to damage somebody. Whereas in like Japan, they're like, go for the gold, see what you can do with this, and like when you're talking about the zombie flicks, like Train to Busan, if you haven't seen it. But there was another one I was trying to think of.
High Tension, which is a French horror movie, is fabulous. They came out about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
High Tension.
That was one I haven't seen it in a long while, but I do remember like the first half of it. I was like, wow, this is really crazy. We actually had to like take a break after the whole farmhouse and everything. I was like, all right, we all need to take like a breather. And then after that, like the rest of it, like, oh, okay, whatever. It's you just sit through it. It's no big deal. But that first half is crazy effects.
High Tension. I'll look at
High Tension or
Hot HAUTE, Hot Tension. Yeah.
Oh, Hot.
That's
I think you'd be able to find it as High Tension.
Yeah.
What's the one with the little girl that's like the vampire? I thought it was a French film. The little boy like helps her.
Let the Right One In. The Swedish, I think.
I think it's
Let the Right
Swedish.
One In. Yeah.
Not let the wait. Is that the one?
Let the Right One In? Wait, is it Let the Right One In, or is that another one?
Let the Right One In? I thought it was the one with the demon that gets passed every time you have sex.
Just
giving away
no.
Really good.
Yeah.
That's a different film then. Okay.
Yes, that's a different one.
Okay.
It was like shot during, you think it's the 80s or the 90s, you're not quite sure.
Yeah.
I forgot.
It's like very like time agnostic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Let the Right One In. Yeah, I saw the Swedish version. Apparently, there's an American version of it too.
There
I
is.
haven't seen the American one.
It's not as good. It's fine, but like if you were to see it and not see the other one, be fine. If you saw the Swedish one and then you saw the other one, you'd be like, oh, it's like kind of lacking in some areas compared to the original.
So let me ask you guys I'm gonna ask one more question here. Since we're all into horror films, and Kristin is extra about all this, like when I was younger, my friends and I would always like if we saw like there. So by us, my parents' home in Bloomingdale, there's a street called Munger Road, which is supposedly haunted.
That's a movie.
And, they made a really shitty movie on that, about that road. But we would always have a habit of like exploring like abandoned places because somebody would be like, "Oh, this house is haunted," and in your 20s, you're like, "Let's go check it out." Like now, if you said this house is haunted, I'd be like, "Let's just go around it." Let's give it a wide berth. But at that age, we would go in there and like take photographs and like we were all like, let's see if we see something, right? Like Munger Road was a road. We would go there in the middle of the night. They had built a road off of it where they built a bunch of townhomes, but the main road still had like 5 or 6 houses that were supposedly haunted. I never saw anything. The scariest thing we saw was we thought we saw a ghost. We were driving, and at the very, very end of the street, we saw a little white speck. And I was like, holy shit, what is that? And this got closer. It was just a jogger. But it's like, why are you running on Munger Road? And then later I found out there's a mental institute down the street. So it might have been an escapee.
No.
But I was curious to know if you guys ever did anything like that. Because like that was like a thing that we did like weekly.
Wow.
Yeah, you guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. I
did that. So I went to Loyola, and the building at the time that I was there, it's called Sky. And the top floors used to be where the nuns lived. And there's this, I've looked into the history of it. Supposedly a nun had an affair with a priest and she got pregnant and then she ended up hanging herself in that building. That is a story. Apparently the whole thing has been made up, but
Sure.
It's really creepy. You're not allowed in there, and there are elevators that go to nowhere. They're just blocked off in the building. And we snuck up there, and I guess you could get expelled at the time if you snuck up there. So of course, what did we do? We snuck up there. We went at, I think it was around 6 or 7 p.m., where by then it's college campus. Nobody is in classes at that time. And it looked like you stepped back in history into the 1950s. There was shag carpeting and old school furniture. And all of a sudden, we started hearing noises on the floor above us. But we had snuck through like a weird doorway or something. There was no like clear way to get up there, and we had shimmied our way up. So why are we hearing footsteps above us? It was the scariest thing, and it sounded then like it started to come toward us. We got the heck out of there. It was terrifying. And now at the time, like you could see lights at the top floor that would be turned on, and there's why it's completely abandoned. It's an old dormitory for nuns. So why that light would come on, sometimes it'd be off. It was very, very spooky.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you guys, I would just beeline it out of there. It's like Hull House in Chicago. My sister went to UIC for school. And Hull House was, so if you guys know the story of Hull House, it was like one of the first like hospitals, I believe. And that's where the story for Rosemary's Baby comes from, because supposedly there was a baby that was born there that had hooves and a tail and horns or something, and then some priests or monks needed room and board, and they wouldn't let them in, and they died on the front doorsteps. So there's all this like negative energy around that house. But people would say if you looked up in this top left window where the bedrooms were or something, you would see a little demon baby head every once in a while. So I would always park across the street there in the parking lot when I went to concerts, to like when I went to take the red line to concerts, blue line, red line. But I would stand on the median in the middle there and just stare at that window, just hoping for a glimpse of, I don't know what I would do if I'd actually ever seen a demon head pop. You know, I always thought to myself, if you were in charge of Hull House and you knew people were standing there hoping to see something, just make a prop, man, that just every once in a while and goes back down. But I do know for a fact that we took a haunted house tour in that area, and there's a negative vortex there. And I don't know if you guys know what a negative vortex and a positive vortex is, but there's a couple areas in the U.S. that have, like Sedona Valley. If you've ever been there, people always feel like they're being uplifted in that area because there's certain pockets there that have a positive vortex. It's like the magnetic pull and push of the earth, I guess. Hull House has a negative vortex, and it's marked off. You'll see it there if you go there.
Wow.
If you step in that area, you'll feel like energy is being drained from you. It's actually you're just being pulled close, like it's a gravitational pull, I think. Yeah. But it'll feel like you're being sucked dry for a second. And I actually looked through the door because they were like, "Do you want to go inside?" I was like, "No," because when I looked through the door, the fucking chandelier was just barely moving, and I was like, "Wow, I'm good, man. I don't want to take things home with me today." You know, like no. But we segued off from movies for that. I'm gonna wrap this up here quick because we're about an hour and 10 minutes. What I'd like to do is maybe we can make a list of some indie horror flicks that we can watch, and maybe we do a call about that someday, because I know I've got a pretty decent list going here. I think I hit everything on my questions here. So, but also, if you guys ever have other topics you want to talk about, we can throw them in. I'm guessing I'll have Kristin on one day to talk about haunted houses and her house. So, but thanks for being on, guys. I appreciate it. I know it's later in the afternoon. And Andrew's pulling double duty. He's on tomorrow too for another episode. So
I need to get around to watching that latest episode today.
It's actually not as long, so you'll get through it really fast.
It's not a full hour?
If it was an hour, it didn't feel like it. So
okay.
But I'm gonna wrap up here. Give me 1 second, okay? Thanks everyone watching. At one point we had about 15 viewers, which is kind of cool. All right, give me a second.